What's the old cartoon where it's like the guy with the hat pulled over his face and the wife, and then they get in the tornado of fists and rolling pins? You know what I'm talking about?
I do vaguely,
I
yeah.
know what you're talking about. I have no idea what that's called. Yeah.
That'd be the funniest Google to try and find that.
Cartoon man wife fight, tornado, fists, rolling pin. Here's the name of the episode: Cartoon man wife fight, tornado, fists, rolling pin.
That's my Pornhub search history. Hello and welcome to the Bridge Burners Book Club, where together we read, discuss, criticize, and get excited about all things fantasy. I'm your host, Sean, and with me is my co-host, Tyler.
That's me.
And our co-host, Ben.
Ben Bowie, don't forget about me!
We're excited to have you along with us each week as we take a journey together through the books we love. We are so going to forget about Ben Bowie, or Ken Bowie.
Yeah, Ken Bowie is receding into the background of our narrative, but he will be in our hearts forever.
There will be a hole in my thatch that only he can fill.
Yeah, I mean, we got to know these characters from Emond's Field and the Two Rivers like pretty well, I feel like, or at least some of them, and then we're moving on real quick, and I don't feel like we're going to be back anytime soon. Like,
Yeah.
the text jokes about it, I mean, it's like a Robert Jordan joke to himself. He just has the Emond's Fielders constantly being like, surely we're going to be back there in like a couple months or so, you know, pretty soon, anytime now. And you can tell it's just never going to happen.
The war will be over by Christmas, boys.
Exactly.
We no longer have to dig our Ken Bowie or Sin Bowie grave. It is at the depth it's going to be. It will get no deeper, nor any shallower. We've dug it, and now we lie in it.
Yeah. So let's talk about Israel and Palestine, guys. Just kidding.
This is the Fantasy Book Club / current events news podcast.
With a strong libertarian bent.
Yeah.
Oh man, it would be funny to, especially like later on, once they're like more powerful figures in the world, it would be hilarious to do like an episode where we, maybe before we start, you know, we talk about the politics of each of the characters, how we would compare them, how we think they would fit into the real world.
I think once we get into the different cultures and stuff, we can definitely start drawing some comparisons there. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Newt Gingrich is definitely a white cloak. I don't know if that's a relevant figure to reference anymore, but
we just pick out like as many little reference figures as we can and try and throw them into the world or vice versa.
What would Robert Jordan think of Jim Jordan?
Oh, God.
I'll just let my favorite sports teams express my political opinion for me on Twitter.
Good job.
Oh, yeah. I love that. You know, so many things happen in the world, and, you know, you don't have things like sports teams putting out statements on them. But whenever it comes to Israel and Palestine, oh, man, good times. What sports would Rand, Matt, Perrin, and Egwene play? I feel like Perrin's definitely the American football player.
Yeah.
Yeah, he'd be like a defensive tackle.
I think he'd be a good team leader. Yeah.
Matt, I feel like Matt would be
all down with the esports, I feel like. He would be, he'd be playing like Modern Warfare 2 and just being like a real dick and camper about it. He'd probably have his own streaming.
I could see Matt being like a rugby player because there's like kind of like hide the ball tricks and stuff like that. A little sleight of hand.
I was going to say lacrosse.
Yeah, same with lacrosse. Definitely some hiding the balls there.
Yeah.
I feel like Rand would be like a solid point guard for basketball.
Yeah, Rand's definitely a baller.
He would have to like drop out senior year to like help his dad with his business or something.
That's like the inspirational sports movie that turns out to be, you know, he has to help his dad out and he has to quit the team. And then his dad's like kind of gruff and like, I need your help so much, son. I just thank you so much. And then his dad like breaks, you know, and tells him at the end, like, no, you got to go help the team win that last championship game, and sends him back, you know, and his dad puts the work down and shows up on the sidelines. Tam's there watching finally. And Rand's has that moment where he's like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this. And then he looks over and sees his dad watching. He is able to win the championship for the team right there.
Yeah. Breathes out and summons the void and the flame and just nails that last free throw.
Yeah, it would be free throws too.
Yeah, definitely the flame and the void. It's funny how sports announcers just blatantly say 3 throws.
I know.
They're professional sports talkers. Warm up with the wisdom and the warder are in the Wienermobile. Whisked away by the will of the weave.
Oh my God.
The Wienermobile weaves as the Wienermobile wills.
So I got a question this week. I think we can kind of do this in a couple different ways. And when we ask these questions, like, what is your favorite something? To me, when I think about that, it's like, there's recency bias a lot in these sorts of things, and you sort of forget how to talk about a character that you haven't read for a long time, even though you might love them. I think of it more of something sort of recently or that sticks out in your head as someone that you could talk about that you like a lot. I don't like to do like, this is my favorite character of all time. But yeah, the question is, what's one of your favorite characters in any book or series and why? Who wants to go first?
Mine's pretty quick. Man, there's so many over the years. My original favorite character would have been Calvin of Calvin and Hobbes. His imagination matched mine as a child, and it's just like every box and every like closet could be a world and all that stuff. That just came to mind right now. But in fantasy, one of my favorite characters of my favorite, I'm just keeping it to my favorite series, which is the Malazan Book of the Fallen, which is what our podcast is named after. My favorite character is a fellow named Icarium, who is essentially a mortal destroyer of worlds with a legendary temper. However, something has happened to him in that he has a memento-like memory and has become very childlike, innocent, and naive. And over the millennia, he has had these companions that basically are his only friend in the world. And they join him on his kind of aimless adventures as he, by instinct, uncovers these relics that he created, which I don't want to give away spoilers, so we might go down this road sometime. But anyway, it's very heartbreaking with how sweet he can be and how dedicated he is to his friend Mappo. But he's also insanely powerful, and when his temper is awoken, it's crazy to watch. And just kind of like the first half of the series seems like you're just waiting for this ticking time bomb. And he's just kind of an ancillary character that just kind of passes through events, which that's very common in Malazan Book of the Fallen, until you reach the conflagrations of power that come up once every book. I love Icarium, and his storyline is incredibly satisfying.
Yeah, he's kind of a tragic character in that, he's a danger to himself and
to everybody.
Yeah, his friend in it is basically following him around and just doing his best to keep him from destroying everyone that he comes across, because he's like more powerful than his own good. And like you said, kind of childlike and doesn't have his full memory. And as soon as he starts to get too close to it, it's like, no, buddy. Let's keep moving along here.
Yep.
You didn't choose Iskarl Pust.
Oh God, the Lord of Donkeys.
His spider wife, I can't remember her name, but
yeah.
Oh yeah, I always forget about her. Yeah, and I'm thinking about there's so many cool characters in there.
There's so many just scamps and insane people that are gods or demigods or priests.
And there are so many good Malazan characters. I was like just looking up Hellion, who I think she's like the drunk sergeant in Reaper's Gale. The campaign turns into her just going from like tavern to tavern.
She always threatens to cut off her own tits.
Yeah,
that's right.
But I'd say, I don't know, favorite character, but I think a really cool character I think is emblematic of the things that I like would be the protagonist in the second book of the Great Siege series by A.J. Parker, How to Rule an Empire and Get Away with It. The main character is a kind of a failed actor and playwright and impressionist. And when the city that he's in is under siege and the hero, while a great hero is killed, he gets kind of brought in to be the stand-in, the body double, to pretend like this great hero is still alive so the city doesn't give in. And he slowly kind of turns that he's a real scoundrel and a scamp of a guy. The whole book is his first person narrative as he kind of turns a situation where he's basically been kidnapped and forced to impersonate a general into kind of like turning it around and, finally ruling the empire on his own and doing a lot of cool stuff along the way. The whole time you're kind of getting his behind the scenes view, but yet he still is enough of a scoundrel that he even keeps kind of secrets from the audience as a very unreliable narrator. So yeah, that's who I picked. I like a good unreliable narrator. I like a character who's cleverer than anyone else and kind of putting one over on everybody, and he is that in spades.
So wait, if I follow that correctly, he tricks his way into power, essentially?
Yeah, by pretending to be this guy who's dead, and then double-crossing everybody who knows the truth about him.
Oh, he's kind of a scoundrel, but a lovable scoundrel.
Yeah, he's lovable. He does, I think, what he's always trying to do what's right to win this war. By the end, he's kind of lost himself in the role of the emperor.
Another great unreliable narrator, Severian.
Oh, yeah.
In Book of the New Sun.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Sweet. Those are both cool sounding characters, although I know one of them, so I guess I appreciate that already. Like I said before, I feel like I got a little recency bias. There's a bunch of stuff I probably could have picked. I love a lot in the Malazan series and stuff, but I also recently read back through and then finished a bunch of the First Law books, and one of my favorite characters of all time in any fantasy is definitely Sandan Glokta.
Yeah.
I love that guy. Yeah.
He's never really a good person, although he does try to make just and fair decisions in the situations that he's put in, even though throughout them, no matter what, he's always like doing horrible things to somebody, but he tries to limit it mostly to the people that deserve it the most. And he's sort of got that, like, when you meet him, he's a bad guy and he's been through a ton that brought him to this place where he just kind of gave up and became a terrible person. But then at the same time, you can tell that there's this little element of good left in him, and he tries occasionally to do that. But like at the same time, he's literally a torturer. That's his job. And he tortures a lot of people. And he's a person that was tortured and then became that. He's great because he's hilarious, like constantly talking about, he repeats the same things all the time. He says like, body found down by the docks, imagining himself. He's just constantly thinking about turning up dead, or talks about stairs a lot. He hates the person that invented stairs because he's crippled, and like half of the story is him going up and down stairs and being pissed at it and out of breath and barely making it. And he's just cursing him and talks about his loose bowels.
Yeah, I really like when they're talking about his disabilities a lot. The writing is very like focused on what it's physically like to be Glokta. The way that they makes you feel sympathy for a guy who's like cutting people's fingers off inch by inch.
Yeah, you're like almost impressed by how good he is at it, but at the same time, you're like, oh, these people don't actually deserve this. But, yeah, don't want to spoil too much about anything, but he goes through some arcs, and I love a lot of characters in that series because you're following them and their ups and downs, and they don't have like your standard fantasy character arcs where they start out with some shitty attributes and then they end up becoming a better person by the end. That sort of happens to some of the characters, but usually even then, there's so much about them that just when you think that they're going to finally get over that hump and be better, they get brought back down again by the reality of forces outside of their control that are just too much for any one person to change. And that's sort of one of the big themes about that whole series. But you're rooting for him so much sometimes, and you're like, man, I hate this character. Like Giselle is such a horrible shit at the beginning of that series. And then by the time you're finishing the first trilogy, you're like, oh man, I'm rooting for Giselle. And he just ends up like, it's so hard for these people to overcome what's in front of them. And it's kind of depressing sometimes because you don't feel like you get a happy ending. But at the same time, that's closer to reality than I think a lot of us would like to admit. And, fantasy can be escapism and sort of give you that hopeful good versus evil characters becoming better kind of ending that I think a lot of us enjoy a lot of the time. But at the same time, that's just not the way life works, mostly.
There's still a catharsis in ending up shitty.
Yeah.
Just for the novelty of it, or just confirmation of this is real life.
Yeah, for sure. And it's cool putting that over these fantasy tropes that, you get introduced to them and you think they're going to go one way. And then it's just like, oh, this is kind of like, what if that stuff actually happened with magic and heroes? And just all the tropes of a hero's journey and that sort of thing get sort of flipped. And a lot of people do that poorly, but First Law does it well.
It makes the plot more unpredictable because you don't have to abide by the roadmap of every Touchstone fantasy series that preceded you.
Yeah. And you know what? I'll give we don't have to really talk about it, but an honorable mention to Samwise Gamgee. It's kind of a pretty predictable character to pick there, but reading through Lord of the Rings most recently, whenever I did that, I was like, man, Sam is just a good guy. He's just a great character.
What a fucking king.
Yeah.
Yeah, could love him.
He's someone to aspire to be, you know. Speaking of character arcs and not being like regular fantasy tropes, let's get into the Wheel of Time, where they very much are regular fantasy character arcs, I think, for the most part, at least in this book. But maybe they'll get mixed up a little bit as we go along, or they must after 14 books or whatever.
Yeah, I've got some thoughts about like what Rand's starting place is and where he's at. I don't know. I think it's very interesting. Some of the choices that were made here. So let's get into Chapter 13.
Chapter 13, Choices. The party leaves camp and sets out down the north road towards Baerlon. During a week of travel, Lan teaches the boys the basics of using their weapons, Moiraine works with Egwene on her ability to channel, and Tom Merrilin introduces Mat to juggling. When the group finally arrives at Baerlon, Moiraine and Lan are greeted as Mistress Alice and Master Andra by the gatekeeper, who is paid to keep their departures and arrivals a secret. A sense of danger dampens the relief felt by the travelers when they learn that the enemies of the Aes Sedai, a zealous organization known as the Children of the Light, are already in the city. That's kind of what happens, but there's a lot in here. There's a lot of talking. There's a lot of thoughts going on in Rand's head, I feel like, through this. He's thinking a lot about shit that's going on. And
there's some conflict, I think, that shows between like Rand and Egwene, and then there's conflict between Moiraine and Mat and Rand, and I think that all kind of comes to head in this, which is cool.
Well, most importantly, before we even get into the story, we have a new map.
Oh yeah.
Which, as men in our 30s, it's like catnip.
I know, you just like turn it like, oh, there's a new map for this chapter? Oh my god.
It's not even like that helpful. It's a very small segment.
Yeah, because none of the places that we're talking about are on this map. If I'm
Baerlon, if that's what we're choosing to call it, Camlan, Harvalon.
Where's Baerlon?
Oh, maybe Baerlon isn't on here. We're getting ahead of ourselves.
Yeah, this map is useless.
Fuck this map.
I'm gonna burn it.
I think they're south of Camlan. Well, yeah, because they're on the North Road.
At the beginning, it kicks off the chapter with Moiraine going and giving everyone some strength with her channeling. And it's like, Egwene was eager for the experience. Mat and Perrin clearly frightened of it and frightened to say no.
Yeah, that's a little bit of a weird line.
It's like, sounds like they're not giving their full consent to this experience, but okay.
Somebody needs to teach Moiraine a lesson in enthusiastic consent.
I just had like a revelation I had a note in here, but this connects to it as well. This is like a cutscene in like a party-based, like those RPGs where you're like controlling like multiple characters. This is like the level up cutscene where Moiraine goes and heals everybody. And then they have a little training montage with Lan, and everybody's melee skill levels up. Like you get your health back, you level up. Egwene now is like, she's unlocked the skill tree of one of the elements of Sidar. It just comes together so perfectly.
Yeah, we could only have one character interaction, so we chose to, of course, Rand and Egwene together and see what they do. They get in a fight. Okay.
I think she says it twice in this chapter. Men.
Yep.
And we get a couple wool heads.
She says that stuff though, and like she's like looking around like, come on, Moiraine, back me up. And Moraine's the only one that might, and she just kind of ignores her every time she does it.
She doesn't have the U braid. She's not equipped for a frustrated tug.
Thank God for Egwene that Nynaeve appears at the end of the third chapter we're going to get into here. Speaking of the enthusiastic consent, it also says that Tom jerked away from the Aes Sedai's hands, but she seized his gray head with a look that allowed no nonsense. And he scowled through the entire thing, and she smiles mockingly once she takes her hands away. His frown deepened, but he did look refreshed. They all did. Like, holy shit, Moraine, I think she's got sociopath vibes. I'm going to keep saying it.
Isn't there some kind of vow about this? Don't they have like 5 vows or something? And one of them should be enthusiastic consent. If it's not.
Yeah, yikes. Red flag. Keep your kids away from Moiraine. She'll put her hands on their head.
She'll kidnap them and touch them.
It's kind of crazy though. She does that and they all seem fine. And, we got this sort of description with the horses last chapter where Lance said that they still need the sleep and that like the horses will die if they keep trying to ride too long without actually sleeping, even though they feel like they don't need it. They only get an hour or 2 of sleep after she does this to them and then they keep going. And it's like, God damn, like they need to worry about that with themselves. That's not even enough to get in a full sleep cycle.
Talks about how Rand, when he is falling asleep, he's like, oh man, I feel great. I feel like I don't need to sleep at all. And then he does sleep for a couple hours and then wakes up feeling even better. Which one thing we're not getting so far is a really good look at like the cost of magic, because like you're seeing Moraine, clearly she's tired. She has to drink a little tea or something, but it's not like she's able to do a lot of kind of crazy stuff at the cost of just being a little bit fatigued.
But she was using a Angriel when she was calling down lightning in Emmons Field, so she wasn't completely unaided. And she is also like a pretty powerful.
I was thinking more just like the fog and the healing and the horses and all of that.
Or she's just very good at hiding it.
Did they clarify how that Angriel works? Like, did it sort of say it needs to be recharged or something like that?
I don't think it needs to be recharged. I'm not sure. It just aids in channeling. I mean, it isn't a source of the true source, but it helps channel it. And we haven't really got into the...
Yeah, it's like an amplifier.
Yeah, an amplifier.
I did make a note here that a couple pages into this chapter, it just kind of states that the journey to Baerlon took almost a week. And then it continues throughout the chapter describing what happened during that week.
I know. That threw me off. And they're like, it was only yesterday we crossed the Terran Ferry. You're like, wait a second.
Yeah.
Don't say at the beginning that it took a week.
It looked like there was a time gap, but no, then like the rest of the chapter is describing those 3 weeks starting now.
Yeah, and it's the first time that the time isn't just real time. Like it's the first time skip besides a little bit of sleep that we've had described here and some dreaming, that it sort of changes the pacing of the book overall, I think.
We also get the names of Moraine and Lan's horses, which I knew all the listeners are very interested in. We've got Mandarb for Lan's horse, which means blade. And we've got Aldib for Moraine, a mare, which means west wind in the old tongue. One of the silliest, I think most fun fantasy tropes is that there was only one language before, and we just call it the old language, and it was the same for everybody.
Ah, yeah, the old tongue. One thing, just a little aside here, it mentions what grew around the area, which of course we got some coarse thistle and some stinkweed, that classic stinkweed. But also it says stinging nettles, which is a real thing. Have you guys ever had stinging nettles? Ever touched some?
Oh, yes.
Yep.
Yeah, me too. It's really painful.
It fucking sucks.
Yeah, it sucks. Although I would say it's not as bad as poison oak. Poison oak will stay for weeks.
I was actually going to ask, I am, I think, a fairly unique person in this, especially for someone that was outside and being very not careful through a lot of my childhood and also adulthood, like hiking around and backpacking and things like that. I have never gotten poison oak or poison ivy. What about you guys?
No, I've never gotten either one, but I think you have, Ben, right?
I have. I haven't had it as bad. Kayla had, my girlfriend, had it. Most likely it was poison oak. It was so bad though that she was seeing specialists that thought it was like an autoimmune disease.
Jesus Christ.
And then after like all these medications and stuff like that, it was bad. Big blisters. I don't want to describe it too much, but they're just like, oh wait, no, that's probably just poison oak. But I've had it, like we went backpacking on the Rogue River Trail, and it was everywhere, and it seemed like we avoided it. But then like 2 weeks later, it just like, and it could have been from something else, but I had this like nasty, just raised rash up my arm that lasted for probably 2 weeks or so. And it could have like been on my tent or something, and I just maybe touched it later. I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like I'm karmically due for that.
When I was a kid, I ran through a clearing wearing like flip-flops and shorts, not realizing it was like all stinging nettle until I got to the other side.
Oh my God.
And that was a painful afternoon.
Yeah, I think I got it when I was probably like 10 or something hiking, and I didn't have any real good way to treat it. I don't even know what you can do really, but I just remember washing it out in a little stream as much as I could and then like putting mud on it.
Just to like cool it and like, oh man, the blisters are so bad. Yeah. Luckily, it doesn't last too long. That is the good thing. You're going to be fine by the end of the day.
Yeah, I would take that over some other things, I guess, but holy shit.
What is the, it just popped into my head. What is the choices? What are the choices that they're referring to in the chapter title?
That's a good question. Just like the basic thing that would come to my mind would just be maybe that they're making choices about who they want to be, because they're basically most of the chapter is taken up by describing them learning things from the different adults that they're with. So like,
yeah,
I guess maybe deciding what kind of person they want to be out in this world that they're just setting out into. I don't know.
Yeah, that's something I was trying to think about as well. And it doesn't, I mean, I can kind of see it with Egwene and like where she is like really kind of taking a step out. But for the rest of them, they're just kind of like on a road to the next place. And I don't really see a lot of choices. I think it's mostly going to be around Egwene's storyline because that's what her and Rand get into a little bit of a spat about. Like the choices that she is making that he feels are kind of pulling her further away. The biggest choice, I think, is, as always in this book, is whether or not she's going to braid or unbraid her hair.
Which she chooses to unbraid. That's worthy of a chapter title.
So they travel down the road a bit and basically they go from night to night, and Tom Maryland smokes and they make some tea real quick and then put out the fire, and then everyone listens to Tom Maryland tell a story, and that's about it. They learn how to do some shit from Lan, and Egwene goes off every night with Moiraine, and they talk for an hour or two somewhere out in the woods about girl stuff, girl magic.
The morning that after Tom tells the story is when we get Egwene waking up and starts to unbraid her hair, and Rand is like watching her but trying not to watch. And it's a kind of a funny and juvenile scene where like she's combing out her hair and it's really bothering Rand that he's seeing her hair unbraided. And then when she starts to like go about her day not braiding her hair again, he like flips the F out. And it's like he really is trying to control Egwene's body in a lot of strange ways. Like,
yeah, 100%.
What are you doing? How dare you not braid your hair? And she's just like, dude, we're out in the world. People don't do that everywhere.
I got the quote here. All your life you've waited to wear your hair in a braid, and now you're giving it up? Why? Because she doesn't braid hers? Aes Sedai don't braid their hair, she said simply. At least not unless they want to. He just goes on, it's like, you're not an Aes Sedai, blah, blah, blah. He says that the women's circle would have a fit if they could see you now, and she's just like, women's circle business is none of yours, Rand al'Thor, and I will be an Aes Sedai, just as soon as I reach Tar Valon. I love the way she says that. They're like, as soon as she reaches Tar Valon, she's going to be an Aes Sedai. I'm not sure it works that way, Egwene, but...
And Rand is not like that. He basically accuses Aes Sedai of being dark friends, and she's like, what the fuck, man? You're going to call her a dark friend after she saved your dad? Has her fists clenched and she's going to hit him. And she says, after she saved the village and after she saved your father. I really underlined that. I thought it was good because like Rand doesn't ever really seem to be super grateful to Moiraine for what she's done, or he's just like so quickly moved on to like, oh, and now I've got to leave.
She's got some classic Two Rivers insults. She calls him the muleyest, most wool-headed, and then she gets cut off by Lan. But we get the wool-headed. She definitely throws that at him. And also muleyest, which I assume is just calling him like a mule.
It was muley-er, and then muleyest. Yeah.
And then, they get interrupted by Lan, and everyone's just staring at them. They've been shouting, and they didn't even realize it, which is classic little scene there. And they both get embarrassed, and then they don't talk for the rest of this trip, I think, until they get to Baerlon.
It's funny how they like will just say like, and they didn't talk for 2 days. You're like, what, really? There's only like a couple of you guys in this party. And then like, yeah, it's kind of funny because like the next little bit they get into is really Perrin and Matt and Rand kind of like second guessing things, and were the Dragar really chasing us? And maybe we should just like dip out and go somewhere else. And that's when Moiraine like walks in on them talking about leaving and just is like, before I let the Dark One have you, I will destroy you myself. That's a cool line to say.
That's badass.
Psycho. She just keeps silent for a while and lets them go a lot, and then she just comes in with these lines where she's like, by the way, I could snap my fingers and you'd all die, so listen to me.
And then we come up to the heckin' sneak, which is you catch some good, these little exposition sessions between Egwene and Moraine, as well as just providing more understanding of the true source. Rand sneaks up on them in their little session and using his rabbit stalking skills, eavesdrops on them.
I wouldn't drop a no eaves, a promise.
Moraine is kind of expanding on the 5 powers: earth, wind, fire, water, and spirit. And Egwene's like, why do the men have the strong powers, earth and fire? And then it's basically a big explanation of rock, paper, scissors, essentially.
Moraine's like, oh, child, you think that those are the most powerful ones? Didn't you know that wind can wear down a rock and water can quench fire and wind can snuff it out? That kind of thing.
There's 2 good revelations there, or actually they're 2 partial revelations of Moraine lets it slip that there's another channeler in Emmons Field. Like, what are the odds?
But won't say who.
But then she said, I've said too much. We can all probably guess who that could be.
It was Ken Bowie.
Definitely Ken Bowie.
Egwene asked her, why did the Trollocs come to Emmons Field? Which is basically also, why did you come to Emmons Field, indirectly? And then at that time, Moraine senses Rand in the darkness and stares and looks, turns her head to look in his area, and
we assume she does.
Yeah, and he slinks back to his bedroll.
By luck alone, he doesn't end up making a shit ton of noise as he's like terrified and stumbling back. He's so afraid of Moraine.
Don't fart, don't fart, don't fart.
I think we get in these chapters like at least one more, if not a couple more, descriptions of Tom Maryland snoring. Tom snoring like a saw cutting an oak knot.
When Rand does fall asleep, we got another brief dream description in here. His sleep was fitful and filled with sweaty dreams where all the men in Emmons Field claimed to be the Dragon Reborn, and all the women had blue stones in their hair like the one Moraine wore. He did not try to overhear Moraine and Egwene again.
Yeah, that one seemed like just a regular Rand dream.
Yeah. That's just you working through something there, buddy.
Exactly. And then it doesn't take long after that before they arrive at Baerlon. I love when they roll up to the city and they first see it. One of the first descriptions is hundreds of chimneys, and then there was not a thatched roof to be seen. Poor Ken Bowie. That guy would not be able to leave Two Rivers.
No. It seems like his thatch blaster has a real limited range unless we could really take over the market here.
Yeah, maybe Ken Bowie's like, he's afraid of this news from the outside world because he doesn't want news of being able to build better roofs to come into Two Rivers, and then he's out of a job.
John Tyler's Slate Freighter 2000 comes in. He's really screwed.
Another brief description here. Tom Maryland blew out his mustaches.
They're billowy when they're described in a plural sense.
Yeah, you can blow them out.
They keep calling it a city, and Tom Maryland blows his mustaches out and calls it city. He snorted.
Yeah, he keeps laughing that they think this is a real city. But to be fair, it does sound like a pretty big city, like comparatively to anything they've seen along so far. It's sounded like hundreds of buildings in it. So, a lot. They get to the outside and they sort of make their way to the gate, and they have this little conversation as they're approaching. It's like, don't talk about anything. Don't say a goddamn thing when we get there. No Trollocs, no half-men, no fades, none of that stuff. And you must not even think of the Dark One, which that might actually be a real warning. Like,
well, when you tell us not to think about it, we're just going to think about it more, Moraine.
Yeah. Lan even puts away his camouflage cloak, his secret future armor that he has.
They tell them that they go by their aliases, Mistress Alice and Master Andra. They've clearly established these identities because we'll find out that they are a big hit in Baerlon.
Yeah, everyone knows them and loves them. When they get to the gate, they meet Master Master Avon. That guy's a delight. I love Master Avon. Great little character.
Wrinkles deepening and a gap-toothed smile. I mean, how can you not love that? That's beautiful. I kind of picture the gatekeeper from The Wizard of Oz. I don't remember what any of his lines are. Not no buddy, not no how.
He's clearly been paid off previously by them, and then he gets dropped another coin by Lan as they go in to not say anything about them, but gives them a little gossip as they approach and sort of says that, oh man, there's all these miners and people in from the mountains because finally they were able to make it in after the harsh winter, and they're all just ready to get the fuck out of there because it sounds like everywhere around is having the same kind of problems Two Rivers was with the late winter. And then, yeah, they find out that the Children of the Light are around town. And to me, they sound, at least aesthetically and just in a basic sense, they're kind of coded to be like the Knights Templar a little bit, I felt.
Most deaf.
Yeah, or like kind of crusadery, something like that. Yeah.
You know, without other knowledge, that sounds like they are a group that goes around and hunts Aes Sedai. They don't like anything to do with magic or even people that mention stuff like Trollocs and Dark Friends and things. They said if you even talk about that stuff, they're probably going to take you in. And I don't know, I guess that means they're against anything that has to do with magic, whether or not you want to say it's for good or bad, but they supposedly are on the side of good.
But then there's like how they gets called out, like if they're hunting evil, why aren't they up in Saldea or in Gildan where like the false dragon is, right? Like why are they here if that's what they're looking for? Like it's kind of called out.
Yeah, like it sounds like most of the town folk don't like their kind around there, and the governor does not like them. They mentioned the governor a few times and how he's kind of keeping them busy and only letting like 10 of them into the town at once and trying to keep them from stirring up trouble because they'll just kind of start pulling people into question and do who knows what with them. And then it's common for them to just like find some old woman and be like, "You're a witch," and burn her to make an example, and they don't want that to happen. Apparently, there's already been some dragon's fangs put on people's doors, which, continuation of some Two Rivers shit going on. I don't know if that's supposed to imply that the white cloaks are the ones, the Children of the Light are the ones that put that on the door, or people are reacting to their presence and getting crazy about that.
I feel like that's more the latter, but yeah, I don't know for sure.
I love the exchange when he starts talking about the uprising of the Dragon Reborn in Gelden, and he's talking about that Aes Sedai went to go fight the dragon in Gelden, and some died, or maybe none died, or who knows, but he can do things, I hear. Use the one power. There's thousands following him. And Lance says, "Don't be a fool." He's like, "Oh yeah, his followers call themselves the people of the dragon." And Moraine's like, "You could call your mule the people of the dragon if you wanted." And he's just getting verbally abused for just sharing information. They're like, "Shut the fuck up, you sniveling worm. Fuck you." If they were not trying to draw attention to themselves, they could be a little less reactive to this news.
It says his face folded into a hurt look. Aww.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny that they're trying to pass incognito and they do it by spreading around an absurd amount of money, which doesn't really, it's not really how you get forgotten in any kind of meaningful way, but okay.
True. Everyone seems to remember them, that's for sure.
But then we do get the quick call out that there is this prophecy around that when the people of Dragon come to, what is it? The Stone of Tyr, which is a city, far to the south, that there's going to be something going on there.
That's where supposedly the people of the dragon are headed with this army that this supposedly false dragon is gathering around him. So, I love when fantasy books do that. There's something that's obviously probably going to come into the story later, and you start to kind of just build up the folk talking about it, and then you find out what the truth of it is later. That's always fun.
No, none of this stuff is relevant later, so we can just probably forget about it.
Yeah, probably.
And then they really just kind of head on into the inn. And we were introduced real fast to
Master Fitch.
Yeah, Master Fitch. There we go. And again, we have another one-syllable stable boy name. We got Much takes a hold of the horses. And then out comes Master Fitch, who has puffs of hair sticking out above his ears and a sparkling white apron, slapping both hands against his round belly as he talks.
Like we were saying with the gatekeeper, when the innkeeper, he's like, he obviously knows Master Andra and Mistress Alice. And for some reason, I couldn't really figure out exactly why, besides maybe they just spend a lot of money. But he seems to think they're like the most important customers. And he's like super excited to have them there. And we'll get into, but he sets them up real nice. He's already full.
With an extremely crowded inn, he kicks people out, I bet. Which, I mean, man, like, Len has no problem whatsoever spreading gold around, it seems.
Yeah, Moraine just always like gives him a glance and he just pulls out the coin sack and starts spreading it around. All right, let's get into chapter 14 then, shall we?
Chapter 14, The Stag and Lion. Under their assumed names, Moraine and Lan are greeted by an old acquaintance, Master Fitch, innkeeper of the Stag and Lion. With winter beginning to thaw, the inn is overflowing from the miners and hunters making their way to the town of Berlin to take refuge from the cold. Even with the overcrowding, Master Fitch is able to find them a few rooms and treat them to a well-anticipated bath. Before joining the boys and Tom in the baths, Lan seeks out the common room to gather the gossip of the day. Once they have completed their soak, they find Moraine in the hallway speaking to a boyish girl. Master Fitch treats them to a humble feast that is devoured with great aplomb. Lan shares that he has learned more of the uprising in Geldan surrounding the false dragon, Loghain. They're shown to their rooms where Rand swiftly falls asleep and is greeted by another nightmare.
I love when they get into that bathroom, which we'll get into here soon, but there's some funny reactions there. It's a fun little chapter.
It's fun. A surprising amount of nudity, but yeah, we like it.
This is where the his penchant for description does ease off a little bit.
Yeah.
Fortunately or unfortunately.
I don't know. We get a deep description of this as they go along.
Well, I mean, in the baths, particularly.
I like the way that they call out. So they go up to the baths, and there's a bath attendant, a slight dark-haired fellow named Ara, A-R-A, up there. And he just barely says 2 words except to say that Rand has a funny accent. And then it was a couple times during where they're talking about Berlin, where they talk about like the accent just being weird here. And I think that's kind of like, that's funny because it rings true to some stuff I was reading. Like it used to be, if you traveled from like Paris to Rome, you wouldn't like travel a ways where everyone spoke French and then one day everyone speaks Italian. Like the languages would just change slightly as you went along. And at some point you would be speaking Italian instead of French, but you wouldn't be able to like, there's no line.
Rand thinks that both of them sound like they speak with a mouthful of mush, which let's try to imagine how that is.
I'm imagining Andre the Giant for some reason.
Yeah.
Does anybody want a peanut? But that's probably not what it is.
I love though when they first get to that bathroom and it's like the intro to it is like there's a dozen tall copper bathtubs in a circle on the tiled floor that slope down to a drain in the center of the big stone walled room. There's a large cake of yellow soap on a stool and big black iron cauldrons of water heating over fires along one wall, a big fireplace as well. Perrin just goes, "Almost as good as the wine spring inn back home," Perrin said loyally, if not exactly with a great attention to truth. And Tom barks a laugh, and clearly this place is really nice, and they're all just like holding on to that. 2 Rivers is the best. I love how the guy just stands there too and like chills while they're bathing, just in case you need anything.
Rand shrugged out of his cloak and stripped off his clothes while Era filled 4 of the copper tubs, which filling 4 tubs by hand, that's going to take a couple minutes. So
no joke.
Rand's clearly hanging out, dick out for a while.
These people have a level of plumbing that they have a drain on the floor indoors here. Like that seems pretty advanced.
On the 2nd floor too.
I doubt the wine spring has anything like that.
No.
Perrin.
Yeah. Do they talk about anything interesting while they're soaking in the tubs first?
The bath attendant, Era, says some stuff about what's going on and says Trollocs. And then Matt's about to talk about Trollocs when Lan like kicks the door in, which I think is pretty funny. Basically like says, "No, I'm going to like handle my own bath. Get the fuck out of here, Era."
But it's just to get him out of the room so that he can be like, "Matt, what the fuck?" He's like, "What? I was just going to tell him about the Trollocs, nothing else." God damn, they just emphasized to you like 10 minutes before you walked into this town that...
Don't even think about it.
Yeah.
He is not good at this. I think Rand actually, throughout these chapters is pretty good at keeping the game up or not breaking character.
Yeah, even to Min when she's giving him shit about it, like she already knows everything.
And then they leave. As they leave, they see Moraine talking to a slender girl not much taller than herself, with dark hair cut short. And I'm assuming that's Min, for that we're going to meet later, right? Yeah.
Most definitely.
Yeah, and Moraine does mention her name at the beginning of the chapter.
Yeah, she whispers something to her that we don't know what it is, but they're looking at the young Emmons Fielders when they say it, and she sort of acknowledges them. So she's saying something about them to this girl for whatever reason, which we're already going to talk about the chapter, so it's not really spoiling. She sees things, which we don't know exactly what that is, but some interesting stuff she tells about in a little bit here.
Then they head in for looks like a pretty nice dinner in a private room in this inn, which does, we're not kind of glossing over, but seems to be pretty freaking crowded. So Master Fitch is waiting on them hand and foot here, yeah.
Yeah, why? I think it must just be the money.
A meal that surpasses everything they've eaten for weeks, and he's still basically essentially apologizing for it because their cellars are bare and...
Yeah, I think it was interesting that they do kind of like call out that, yeah, even here times are tough, cellars are bare, and all he can really eat is, root crops.
He says just the chickens. He get 3 roast chickens and some turnips and hen peas with a little cheese after. He apologizes for that. I don't know. Sounds pretty good. What are hen peas?
Garbanzo bean, maybe, or something.
Yeah, it's got to be chickpeas. Hen peas, chickpeas.
Maybe a little bit a more mature garbanzo.
There you go. But yeah, he brings in this feast for them essentially. As soon as the servants leave the room, Lan just runs to the door immediately and listens for them. And then he's like, okay, it's fine. We can talk here. I do like this guy, though, before he leaves. He says he's full of old wind. That's why he needs to shut up, because he's full of old wind, which to me just reminds me of there's an actual medical condition called trapped wind, which means that sometimes people will come into the hospital with like abdominal pain and they think that they have some bigger problem and they literally just need the nurses to put some pressure on them, get the farts out of them. They'll literally fart people in the hospital.
Please, Doc, I really need to fight. Can you please just sit on me? Come on, Doc.
That's what Idi Amin has in The Last King of Scotland, which is when you get to see Forrest Whitaker fart for 30 seconds on screen. It's really great.
I've never seen that one. Wow, that sounds crazy.
Yeah, it's an okay movie, but I mean, I would watch it just to see Forrest Whitaker fart for that long. It's really great.
So I just like to imagine that Master Fitch has trapped wind, and that's what he's really talking about there. But yeah, he gets ushered out of the room, and then Lan listens, and then they talk about some stuff, but not really that much.
They talk about Gildan, Logain.
So this is where Logain, the false dragon, gets his first call out. Some people say the Aes Sedai are killed. Some say they went over to him. Blah, blah, blah. Gossip, gossip, gossip. Yeah, and then like what's interesting, I think, they just kind of gloss over the meal, and then they head upstairs. And then, so Moraine and Egwene get a room. That makes sense.
Get a room.
There's 2 rooms to split between the other men. So Rand, Lan, and Tom share a room, while Matt and Perrin take the other room.
They'd just be keeping each other up all night giggling.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. I mean, just like, why would you put the 3 little boys, like, somebody's going to have to sleep on the floor or whatever they describe.
They bring in an extra bed.
Tom has to sleep in the extra bed. But yeah, why wouldn't they just do it the other way? And just story-wise, I guess it doesn't work out that well for what happens next.
You would think that they would have figured out that they should put Matt in with probably Lan, because Matt's the one most likely to get into trouble. But nope, that does not happen, especially after Lan caught him almost telling people about Trollocs.
This whole then next dream bit would play out very differently if all 3 boys were in the same room together. So
true.
This is where the nightmare takes off. I wasn't a big fan of the last nightmare, the whole mountain thing, the traveling through the city, and the mirror drill was there. That felt like it could have just been a piece of cheese or some mustard, as Scrooge would say. This is like legit. This was the whole scenario.
This one has a definite purpose to it. It's clearly, since all 3 of the boys end up talking later and figuring out that they had the same dream or very similar dream, that this is definitely something that's actually happening from an outside entity going into their dreams. The entity introduces himself as Beauzemon, so it's apparently the Dark One, at least from what he says. Rand gets into the dream and he's really thirsty is the big thing. He's dry as dust thirsty, actually.
He hears water dripping and like just goes like, wow, man, I got to get to that water. And he's going down all these hallways and shit. Yeah.
Main thing I noticed at first is that the way it tries to kind of add a magical, strange, dreamlike element to this is it just keeps describing things. And then it says, it's like a cloud, but like different from regular clouds, or flames roared on the hearth like a forge fire with the bellows pumping, but gave no heat. It's always not what you think it is.
There's odd curves and peculiar angles. It's hard to picture, right?
Yeah, he says it as if the chamber had been melted almost haphazardly out of the stone and columns that seemed to grow out of the gray floor. He tries some different doors, and then eventually he decides to open this one, and it opens, and he goes into it. And the one thing that actually seems normal is there's a table and some chairs, and then he notices that there's a dude there. And he's like, what the fuck? Gotta get out of here. And the dude introduces himself. He's like, once more, we meet face to face. Just for an instant, his mouth and eyes became openings into endless caverns of flame, which It's very much just classic Satan stuff going on there, I feel like.
That is the face that's on the back of the dragon, on the spine of the Dragon Reborn that freaked out my mom. She's like, what is this book?
Oh, she thought it was a Satan book when you were a kid?
Yeah.
Nice. Well, I mean, he's kind of representing Satan, but it's funny because it's basically like something straight out of the Bible, because in a second here, he tempts Rand with some wine or whatever is in the goblet, and Rand's like, oh yeah, I'm totally going to drink that. On second thought, this guy's kind of like Satan. Maybe I shouldn't take the wine from him. And he gives it back.
Yeah, way to go, Rand.
Very Jesus-like Rand.
Shaitan. This is the second temptation of Rand, right?
Exactly.
Some call me Baal-Zaman. That means Baal of Ammon, which was the chief god of a city north of Israel in ancient Bible times. And he just keeps trying to like reef on this door handle the whole time. It's just like, I gotta get out of this room. I gotta get out of this room.
Great stuff, Baal-Zaman.
Rand is just like, this is definitely a dream. I'm going to wake up now any second. And the guy's like, does it really fucking matter if it's a dream or not? And they sort of go back and forth on that for a minute. And then what does he even really do? Like, he keeps making some scary faces at him, but what else really happens?
What was this line here? Your father was chosen like a stallion. Your mother was no more than a brood mare to their plans. The plans lead to your death. The Amberlin Sea will use you or to consume, just as Devane and Urian Stonebow and Guer Amel.
This is where he fell asleep on the keyboard.
Guer Amelasan and Rowlin Darksbane. Yeah. Like, he just drops the names of a bunch of dudes who have been used.
I thought that it was clear that when he talks about his father and mother there, Shaitan or Baal-Zaman is talking about Rand's actual parents.
Oh.
As we learned that Tam and Carrie are not his actual parents. And Rand, like, doesn't pick up on that, from what I could tell. He's like,
well, fuck, I didn't pick up on that either until you just said it. So, yeah, maybe we're all not that smart.
Well, no, I mean, because, yeah, Rand replies, my father is a good man and my mother was a good woman. Don't you talk about them. And the flames laugh. And he just goes on about Rand's spirit after that. Perhaps you are the one. But, like, you know, clearly when he talks about his mother and father, he's mentioning stuff about how they were basically chosen to breed together to make this perfect child for the purposes of the Aes Sedai, from what it sounds like. He's at least trying to convince Rand is the truth. And I don't know if we'll find out later on that is true, at least to some extent or not, who his real parents were and how this all came about. But, like, that's definitely a plot line. I mean, that's in the book Dune. Pretty sure that's, what's her name? His mother in Dune is, like, specifically part of this whole plan that's created.
The Bene Gesserit.
Yeah, created to create someone just like the main character in that book.
What's his mom's name? It's like such a normal name.
Rand, you are the Kwisatz Haderach.
Yeah, the Kwisatz. I can't even. The names in that are too weird to remember.
Her name's Jessica, I think.
That's right.
Yeah. Jessica, you were supposed to bear a girl, Jessica.
Yeah, I guess his name's Paul, so.
I feel like that's kind of what he's hinting at here, is that the Aes Sedai have some sort of plan like that, where they're specifically trying to create the dragon, and probably a dragon that they can control or harness for their own purposes.
Yeah, they want like a dragon light, like, you know, not like the full calories of the dragon, but like, you know, just something that you can kind of like session all day.
I feel like the perfect demon, devil, Satan figure is always going to use that element of truth, and whether or not Rand may be better off with whatever this plan was that the Aes Sedai had as compared to what Shaitan can offer. Like, he's going to take those elements of truth and feed it to Rand to try and convince him that those people aren't good for him. Rand mentions that he thinks that Baal-Zaman's supposed to be bound in Shai-Al Ghul along with all the Forsaken. I think that's the first time we really get that sort of put together, that they're all supposed to be bound together in Shai-Al Ghul, which is, I guess, is that like hell?
I think, but it's like described as a physical place because we like saw it last session. So yeah, I don't know. Yeah,
that's true. And but then he sort of denies that though, and he says that he's never been bound there, and
Well, he's been able to walk the world in dreams, I feel like, is kind of what they're saying here, that he's done all these things throughout history. And this is actually, I think it's cool because you get a quick overview of like the major beats of history in this last age, where first he got Lews Therin to do his thing and break the world. Then he's got the Trollocs to do their things and broke the Covenant of the Ten Nations. And then he made Arthur Hawkwing do his thing. And like we get some fun hinting at what Arthur Hawkwing was all about and leading his armies across the ocean. When men such as these could not stand against me, what chance do you have, a toad crouching beside a forest puddle? I like that a lot. You will serve me or you will dance on the Aes Sedai strings until you die. And I mean, really it gets down to like the gist of the series is Rand trying to steer between those.
Yeah, and you get this appearance of a rat on the table, which launches into this thing that sort of torments Rand for the next chapter. He uses his finger to sort of move it through the air, and as he moves his finger and bends it, the rat bends until its back breaks. We get some talking about rats in the next chapter with my new favorite character in these books, the cook, Sarah, and her cat, but we'll talk about that shortly.
At the end of this chapter, Rand does wake up from his nightmare, and we get one more description of Tom Maryland snoring. This time, it's like canvas ripping. Yeah, and that's it. And then he does think about going and talking to Moraine about this, but then he lays back and like, nah, fuck it. It's not bad enough. Let's head on to the next chapter. Should we do a quick ad break here?
Oh, yes. Hello, listener. It's me, Sean. I'm taking a break from the show today to have a little talk with you about mental health. In the world we live in these days, it's more important than ever to have a moment for yourself, to pause, to take a beat, and ask yourself, how am I doing? Really? And you know, it wasn't too long ago that I would have answered, not good, Sean. Not good. Life is tough. We're all getting older, and the future is uncertain. But I don't feel that way anymore, and it's all because I learned a very simple phrase. When life gets mean, get min. That's right. I'm a proud customer of Elmindra Farshaw's Certainty Services, and my mental health couldn't be better.
For a low monthly fee, world-acclaimed visionary Min Farshaw will make the wheels weaving your personal carpet. No pilgrimage necessary. A short viewing via modern technology will clue you into the auras and symbols that are floating around your head right now. And best of all, the personalized yet non-specific nature of the reading ensures that they are 100% unfalsifiable and guaranteed to be totally accurate in hindsight. Now that's what I call peace of mind.
Elminda Farshaw's Certainty Services accepts no responsibility for fates impacted by the actions of Ta'veren or the Dark One. Readings performed remotely subject to traveling fees. Must be 18 years or older, in this and all past lives. Sexual favors are no longer accepted as payment.
Wow, I think we can all agree that was an important message. Let's hear that chapter summary.
Chapter 15. Strangers and Friends. Waking from his nightmare to find the morning passing and the room empty, Rand wanders through the inn. He learns from the cook that several dead rats have been found this morning, their backs snapped, and he finds Perrin still in his bed, miserable. All three young men have had similar nightmares. Heading out into the courtyard, Rand encounters Min, a young woman with a mysterious ability to see visions and auras. She has already reported on the boys to Moraine and happily shares the portentous but mysterious symbols she sees on the whole party. Leaving Min behind, Rand heads out into the town of Berlin and encounters Paladin Fane in the streets. The ragged man flees and Rand bumps into Matt, who is out on the town. The duo cause some trouble for a group of white cloaks, and Rand finds himself challenging one of their leaders with his heron-marked blade. The town militia arrives just in time to break up the scene. Finally, Matt and Rand meet up with Tom Maryland and tell him about their dreams, and they head back to the inn just to learn that Nynaeve has arrived. This is a lot of bumping into each other's in this chapters.
I love when Paladin Fane appears. I actually knew it was Paladin Fane just by the description before Rand said it.
Yeah. Oh, hi.
Robert Jordan did a good enough job describing Paladin Fane in both points that I was able to pick up on who it was just with a short little description of what Rand sees. Getting right into this chapter, like I said, we get this character introduced right away. Rand just kind of wakes up and he's late and waking and no one got him up and everyone's out of the room already. And he's like, God damn it, what the fuck? Or I'm sorry, blood and ashes, but they could have waked me. And then he goes down to the kitchen and he confronts a plump woman whose arms are covered in flour to her elbows. She's got a great scene right when he rolls up where she's just talking to Master Fitch, the innkeeper, and he's giving her shit because a bunch of people have complained about apparently her cat killed all these rats overnight. Rand automatically perks up when he hears, of course, but she's like, "My Siri is a good cat, and I won't hear a word otherwise, do you hear?" And she just like is defending her cat vigorously, and she's like taking her apron off as they're having this conversation. She's like, "You know what? Fine. If you're going to give me shit about my cat, I'm just going to leave. I'll take my cat with me and I'll do my cooking elsewhere. You know what? Fine. I'm done with this."
I love it.
And he's just like, "No, please, no. I'm sorry. It's fine. Your cat's great. I love the cat. She's the best cat."
Girl, you know you're my world.
I know. Just the immediate throw of a strike and management folds. Love it.
It's over her defending her cat.
But then that's when it is revealed that all the rats have been found around the inn with their backs broken. And that's, why, of course, the cat's in trouble.
I felt like that actually gave me more like creeps than the actual dream did. That's some horror movie shit. You wake up and you're like, oh, good, it was just a dream. And then you find out that maybe it wasn't.
Yeah, I think that's my problem. I think in general with like scary dream sequences like this is like, as a reader, you're always like, well, yeah, but it's just a fucking dream. So no matter what happens, it's not that bad. But then, something like this breaks that wall and you're like, oh, shoot. But as we get along, how much of this is coming from Rand experiencing the dream versus is it the dream that's causing these, I think is interesting.
Yeah. When I say this, I'm only talking about the first movie in this series, but Nightmare on Elm Street, like the first one, is like one of the reasons why people actually liked it. Because you're in these dreams and it was to the point where, they're trying the whole movie eventually to not fall asleep at all because their dreams are completely dangerous and whatever happens in them actually ends up being real. That's pretty terrifying because sometimes, you get those nightmares.
Nightmare on Elm Street spoiler, Sean. Jeez.
You get those nightmares sometimes where you wake up and like sometimes you have to sort of remind yourself when you're shaking out of sleep that it wasn't real or reacquaint yourself with what reality actually is, especially when your dreams touch on close subjects to your real life or things that have to do with work or people stuff like that.
Have you guys had dreams where you've tried to force yourself to wake up and then you wake up into a new dream and you just keep repeating that cycle? I've had that happen a few times where like you wake up into a new dream, something else bad happens, and then you're like, I gotta get out of this. You realize it's a dream. This is maybe not that common, but every like couple years this happens to me where I'm trying to escape and I keep getting sucked into a new Inception type thing. It's terrifying. It's usually probably because I ate cheese.
No, I think I've had that a little bit. Like, I have to sort of, like I was saying, I got to reacquaint myself with what is reality after a bit. And like, yeah, especially if you do that thing where you kind of wake up early in the morning and then fall back asleep again and go back into your dreams and sort of take up where you left off, but not quite. It can be very confusing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Rand does not enjoy his breakfast, which sounds delicious, even if it's just bread and cheese and some milk. But, coming from Sarah, it would be delicious. Goes into the common room where Tom is in the middle of an old standard one we all know, the hunt for the horn of Valier, of course.
Oh, yeah.
Woo! Crowd favorite.
Anyway, he goes to check on Perrin, who also stayed behind, and he's being real solemn and moody and just, I don't want to go to school. I don't care if it's a cool city. I bet it's no Emmons Field.
To be fair, Rand didn't want to really either, but something sparked him to get out of bed. And Matt, apparently, Perrin mentions that he also sort of talked to Matt about this dream, and Matt was like, oh, that's crazy, a dream? I definitely didn't. Gotta go. See ya. Matt's he's not as emotionally ready to talk about these things as the other two.
He admitted that because he asked, did he kill a rat? And so Perrin realizes that he also had the same.
Yeah, it's very similar to the very beginning when they're talking about having seen the Black Rider, and they're like, oh shit, wait, really? You saw that too?
I like that this time we do get to hear it from Perrin because it seems like frequently up to there, it's been like Rand and Matt talking about something and then Perrin being like, oh, me too. So like, this time it's Rand and Perrin and then Matt's the me too at the end.
Rand's talking to him. Perrin won't leave. So he's like, okay, I got to go out and see this town at least. I mean, I got to try. But he doesn't really make it that far. He's like feeling shitty and rubbing his temples a lot, stuff like that. But he ends up out in the stable yard and he's just kind of standing there while Much goes in and out carrying things. But I learned this word here. He calls the stable boys ostlers or like ostlers. And I looked it up and I was like, what is this word? I love how specific it is. A man employed to look after the horses of people staying at an inn. Is so specific, is at an inn specifically.
I believe that's where we get the word hostel from.
I think so because it also said hostler when I looked it up, or hostler. I also learned the word truculent, which is eager to or quick to argue or fight, aggressively defiant. Yeah, Rand's sitting there with Much giving him truculent looks like he's ready to fight. And he's just like, man, I don't want to go out into the town. It's scary out there and I feel shitty. And he's sitting there by the door. And then Min shows up here, I believe.
Aren't you a little short to be a stormtrooper?
Yeah.
It's just reminded me of that, like a shepherd with a heron-marked sword.
She rolls up and calls him out immediately. She's clearly a character that's here to just give Rand shit. He's like, what do you mean, Moiraine? I don't know any Moiraines. I only know Mistress Alice and Master Andra, so I don't know what you're talking about. And she's like, okay, farm boy, whatever.
And I like the way that she talks about like Two Rivers folk. I've heard jokes that they're dumb, and the people who've actually been down there say that you're very polite, but under the surface you're just tough as old tree roots. And she kind of gets a little bit more, definitely is the first outsider who seems to have a more nuance to look at, the Two Rivers. And I think that kind of probably earns her respect right away.
And she can also kind of see right to the core of everybody.
Yeah. I mean, we definitely get that as this goes along.
Well, she's very open, right? Like she has this gift that, the white cloaks would probably execute her for, but she's like, oh, let me just show you how it works.
Yeah, I mean, considering who you're traveling with, I bet you're cool. You seem nice.
Well, I guess she does see some things about Rand that probably makes her feel a little more.
I think she thinks she's hot too, so,
When he sees her at first, he says that she looks like a boy. He just keeps saying that, like, is she a boy or a girl? I don't know. But thinks she's a girl, and then when he sees her the second time here, he just thinks of her as a girl. But oh man, what was that other moment? Oh, when he sees Beelzemon in the dream, he describes what the man looks like that he sees standing there in the room, and he's like, I guess he would be pretty attractive to women. I guess if I had to say it, they would probably think he's attractive, but I definitely don't think he's attractive. I would never say that.
I do get that as well. Yeah.
Such a weird nightmare thought.
He knows he's a sexy man, but he doesn't want to actually admit it to himself, even in his dreams.
I mean, she looks like a boy and she's kind of hot, but I don't think like boys are hot. I mean, that's not what I'm saying here at all about men. That's not it at all. Yeah.
Definitely. 100%.
Then he starts to get into like, I have these powers. I can see things. Talks about how when all of them are together, there's like a big vortex around them, lots of sparks. And then like, man, there's like a straight up like 3-paragraph dump of the things she sees on everybody. And I really like some of these. Like Lan has 7 ruined towers and a baby cradling a sword. The Gleeman is a man juggling fire in the White Tower.
Yeah, it's hard to get into too much of this without any spoilers if you know anything, but
I just want to call out, here are Rand's things. A sword that isn't a sword, which seems like a pretty clear call out to the thing we were just talking about. A golden crown of laurel leaves, a beggar's staff, Rand pouring water on sand, a bloody hand and a white-hot iron, 3 women standing over a funeral bier with him on it, a black rock wet with blood, and then that's where he stops her and says, you don't have to list it all. Which, I mean, I would have appreciated it if she would have listed it all, but thanks, Rand. I guess it's your story.
There's one more. He says, most of all, there's lightning around him, some striking at him, and some coming out of him.
And she infers that their paths are going to cross again, whether they like it or not.
Yeah. It doesn't say when and how or anything, but if he's going to have a golden crown of laurel leaves and a beggar's staff, either he pretends to be a king or he is a beggar at some point and he's also a king at some point. We'll just keep getting arcs of Rand being straight from the bottom to the top and back down again. Pouring water on sand, a bloody hand with a white-hot iron. Like, says that Perrin is a big curly-haired fellow and he's a wolf. Oh, okay. The strongest things she sees around him are a wolf, a broken crown, and trees flowering all around him, which he's just a druid. That's his class.
Yep. Super druid. Yep.
And Matt, a red eagle, an eye on a balance scale, and a dagger with a ruby, a horn, and a laughing face.
Yeah, that's a bard shit right there.
Well, of course, yeah, we already have the bard, the actual bard, Tom Maryland. It describes a man around him and him juggling fire and the White Tower. Is he magical? Sounds like someone else close to him is magical.
It sounds like she sees mysterious symbols around a lot of people, but this party in particular. That's what finally pushes them out into the street to like get out into the city.
She's like, you can't escape from me. Run if you want.
And he's, this short-haired woman who looks like a boy said some things to me.
Yeah, she so calls him out. He runs away all scared.
Then he bumps into an old friend.
Yeah, immediately he bumps into a bunch of people that he knows. So first he bumps into Pat and Fane, who's...
He's being very evasive and...
runs away.
Yeah, basically runs away. It's like, I sure am hungry, but I don't want to see the Aes Sedai. But boy, that inn sounds warm. Maybe I'll come by, but maybe not.
We were talking about how Rand's pretty good about keeping a low profile, but he totally just gives up a whole bunch of info to Pat and Fane here.
Oh, yeah.
Loses the charade. Yeah.
Tells them exactly where they're staying and how long they're going to be there. Not good.
I wonder if that comes back to bite him in the ass.
Yeah, maybe. He doesn't really say what he's going to do, and then he just kind of runs out back into the alleyway with his ragged coat and disappears. And then Matt runs right into him like immediately after that, who also saw Pat and Fane.
And confirms that he also had the same nightmare.
When Matt first runs into him, he just goes, you must be really turning into a city man. Sleep all morning and run right over people. Which I guess that's city people.
That's what I do. Yep, I'm a city man. I sleep in till 10 o'clock. I go out. I start running. I find an old lady. Boom, just knock her down.
Yeah, exactly.
And then we're introduced to I think the first look at the Children of Light, the White Cloaks, nominally called. And Matt, he's been suppressing his hijinks for as long as he could, and he just can't help it any longer.
He's just unable to. I love it. Like, he just cannot withstand, like, he's got to fuck with these guys because they're in their white cloaks. Yeah.
Yeah, it keeps describing how perfectly clean and neat that everything is about them. And Matt's just like, no. We got to do something about that. I love how he just runs over into a building, like a shop. And I don't know how he accomplishes this because Rand just sees him run in there. And then he appears out of like the attic window with his sling ready to go. And he knocks over these barrels that end up splashing all this mud all over them as they roll into the path. But how does Matt get into a shop, get upstairs, and open the window in that quick a time? That seems pretty crazy. But he pulls it off. And then immediately after he does this, like everyone's looking around and Matt's disappeared. The shopkeeper runs out and he's like, what the fuck? But as soon as he sees the White Cloaks standing there, he just disappears. And then Rand's left.
That is what causes Rand to laugh, yeah. And then that's where the White Cloaks are staring straight at him.
There seems to be some sort of like, he's nursing a headache from the nightmare. And he's also got kind of a peculiar cockiness or aggressiveness that's like he's kind of gripped by it. Seems like an out-of-body experience as he faces down the White Cloaks and is kind of instigating them a little bit.
A tingling filled Rand. The heat had grown to a fever. He wanted to laugh. It felt so good. A small voice in his head shouted that something was wrong, but all he could think of was how full of energy he was, nearly bursting with it.
That could be something with the true source.
The fact that he's carrying around this heron-marked blade like draws a lot of attention to him, but also like people are kind of scared to fuck with him because it clearly means something to be wearing that.
Yeah, these guys are like, why are you laughing? We meet a guy called Bornhold who just sounds like a classic dick that is going to have his comeuppance soon enough. Yeah, it keeps building there. It says the tingle was so strong that he almost quivered. He felt as if he were burning up. Rand drew a deep breath, and abruptly it was all gone, like a pricked bubble. He staggered as it vanished, the realization of what he had just done flooding in on him. Licking his lips, he met Matt's stare. I think we'd better get back to the inn now, he said unsteadily. I definitely think that this is some kind of magical thing going on with Rand. He's building up that lightning he was just hearing about, something like that. And then after that, they run into Tom Maryland, coincidentally, once again, just run into another person. Tom Maryland's going around basically advertising to the town, being like, oh, yes, check it out. I can juggle balls. If you want more of this, come down to the, what is it called? The Stag and the Lion tonight. And then they immediately tell him about their dreams. And he's like, yeah, probably stop talking about this out in the streets and maybe don't tell Moraine about this for a while. I don't know. Seems like a good idea.
He kind of lets on that all these names that have been said, Gwar, Almasound, Rowland Darkbane, all that are all dangerous names from a long time ago. don't say them aloud even when you're alone, which is, I mean, that's like Shaitan level stuff there. Men who shook the pillars of heaven and rocked the world on its foundations. I like that line.
When it both sells to him and confirms with them that this is a real thing, at least like the dream. They didn't have that information, at least as far as they remember from their regular lives, and bringing it out of a dream into the real world, they find out that those are real stories about real people that exist.
And as they're returning back to the inn, Perrin comes caroming. He caroms into them.
Caroms.
Oh, God. One of those words you just say more than you read, you know?
It's not in my vocab.
Then they find out that their worst nightmare has been confirmed.
Yeah.
She's here, and she's pissed.
Nynaeve's back. Yeah, she sounds like she followed them or whatever. I love it. Blood and ashes, Matt yelped. How did she get here? Moiraine, the fairy.
She just straight up bullied the ferryman, who already had a really shitty morning, and then rowing her and her horse in a rowboat across the river, which I'm just picturing in my head. Seems like something out of, like, I don't know, a Wes Anderson movie or something. It's so stupid and absurd.
It's like in the original, like when they first crossed, he was still in his night clothes, but this time he's like in a towel and a shower cap, like one step further in undress.
Yeah, it keeps escalating. He's like, no, not again. Matt just goes, couldn't we just go somewhere else for a while? My da says only a fool puts his hand in a hornet's nest unless he absolutely has to. They're terrified of Nynaeve, holy shit.
The last line of the chapter here, they exchanged glances, drew deep breaths, and marched inside as if to face Trollocs. Like, and it's just Nynaeve. They've done a pretty good job of like characterizing like who she is and why everyone hates her so much, but it's just like she doesn't seem that smart or cool yet as a character. And I guess we really haven't gotten to that yet.
I think she was only on screen, quote unquote, when she like was examining Tam.
Yeah, before that with the town council when she was yelling at them, but yeah, not a whole lot that we've seen of her yet.
But a lot of it's just mostly them talking about her like being the shit out of men and being pissed off.
She has like between 5 and 10 lines when they're out in front of the inn when the peddler shows up, and that's about it. And then, yeah, a couple little lines when she won't help Tam, and then it's all the legends of how she beats up and bullies people. And I remember when I first read this at this point in the book right here, being like, what? Why is she here? And what is her deal? Do we like this character, or is she just kind of a jerk that goes around beating people?
Not yet, if ever. That's debatable.
It's funny, like, I'm sure Moiraine is more powerful than Nynaeve, but in the minds of Rand and the other villagers, Nynaeve is like a force of nature, like a hurricane or an earthquake.
Yeah, it's true. Rand stumbled out from spying on Egwene and Moiraine out in the woods there and was all scared of Moiraine seeing him probably. And I don't know, I feel like he's just as afraid or more of Nynaeve at this point, and she is just a wisdom as far as we know. She's just like the village healer. Those are some fun chapters. I'm excited to see what's coming up here. I haven't browsed ahead.
Yeah, there's not a ton of like action, but a lot of information and character introductions and reintroductions. And
yeah, I get the feeling that it's going to be another 3 chapters in Bear Lawn here coming up, because they're called The Wisdom, Watchers and Hunters, and the Camelin Road. So it sounds like maybe by the 3rd chapter next week we will be back on the road. But
we'll be moving along again.
Robert Jordan definitely takes his time in each of these little towns. So
we're on the Camelin Road at chapter 18, and we don't get to Camelin itself until 35.
Holy shit.
Yeah, we got some time on the road, my friends.
And that brings us to the end of another episode of the Bridge Burners Book Club. We would love it if you follow us on Instagram at Bridge Burners Book Club, on Twitter at Bridge Burners BC, and find us on YouTube at Bridge Burners Book Club, where we will be posting full episodes, clips, and polls going forward. If you would like to write in, shoot us an email at bridgeburnersbc@gmail.com with any comments, questions, or contentions, and maybe we'll read them on air. You can also join our Discord with the link in the episode description for discussions, questions, or to post your best memes. It really helps if you give us a rating on Apple and Google Podcasts, so please consider helping the show to grow. I'm the Sean Chan, and for my co-hosts, Ben Bowie and Tyler the Creator, thank you for listening, and we'll be back next week.
before joining the boys and Tom in the bath.
Ooh.
Parent's cock was short but very thick.
And curly.
Matt's was much longer and had a foreskin that dangled far, far past the head.
And also had fingerless gloves.